in Jacksonville Beach. And we are here today to talk a little bit about what's on everybody's mind, and that is the virus, and how we can manage our lives in what's this new norm, I guess, or temporary norm. Let's put it that way. And so I invited a special guest, a person near and dear to my heart, Carol Miller. Hi, Carol. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Sharyl.
Oh, it's good to see you too. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do, Carol.
Certainly. I'm Carol C.C. Miller. I run a nonprofit called Positive Focus, and I do kindness coaching. And it's all around helping people see love over fear and how to move toward being in a more space of love, kindness, and compassion, even when fear or a virus is in our presence.
Yes. So Carol does a lot of great work, and I would encourage you to check out her and her website. And she's here today to talk to our community a little bit about, how do we manage? Carol, I think a lot of the patients that I see, are just kind of struggling with the stress of not the normal. Certainly, we'll talk a little bit about a wide variety, whether you're someone who is out of work right now, whether you're someone who's furloughed and not getting a paycheck, whether your hours are reduced, or you might be on the other end of the spectrum, like people in my profession, working way too many hours to try to figure out how to keep some balance and during what is just so strange for all of us, because in every aspect of our lives right now, we are just seeing things different than the norm. And I think all of us are struggling a little to adjust to that.
I saw a recent analogy that I thought was so fitting, that we're all in the same storm, yet we're in different boats. Some of our boats are like we're paddling really hard just to stay afloat and survive. Other boats, it's affecting us in lesser ways than some people. And then there are people who are dealing with either loved ones or themselves being sick or loved ones dying. So there's a variety, but just like you said, life isn't normal right now. And that in itself is stressful without am I working too much? Am I not working? Do I need a job? Am I on unemployment? There's so many different facets to this. But the more that we stay focused and centered with what we do have control over, the less impact it will have as far as the stress levels. And stress itself is, as you know, is a common thing for people to get sick from. So the more that we can come up with some tools and tips to help people manage and lessen their stress. I haven't gone live this week, but I was going live daily on maximizing love while minimizing fear or minimizing stress. We're not going to get rid of stress. We're not going to get rid of fear. We're not going to get rid of those things, but we can learn to get ahead of them and to minimize their impact on us rather than let them run the show.
Well, and exactly what's tricky about, the topic of stress is that it's all about, in the end, it's about perception. And it's the current perception that you have right now that is affecting you and your mood and your body and your function. But yet within you, you still have that same tool to change that perception. And so that's what I think is obviously so tricky about us, is because the problem and the solution begin and end at the same place. So
well, and for me, it's also about whether it's a healthy level. Like I think in life in general, we're going to have stress. Deadlines. I tend to be somebody who works better with a deadline. And then so the closer that deadline gets, the more stress happens. But I know I have to get it done now. So some stress can be productive as well. So it's really on how much you're dealing with and if you're allowing it to consume you rather than to get you moving, kind of thing.
Right. And how can you perceive it, maybe in a different manner and take a look at it? And I think that's, maybe a one thing to contemplate, as we're
Yeah.
experiencing things differently every day is, where could this be turned differently? Um, I kind of want to touch a little bit on, I think, the different areas that all of our, listeners today
Right.
are struggling. First it's just handling everyday things. I mean, going to the grocery store, not being
Yeah.
able to go to certain stores, not being able to get things delivered to you if you're using Amazon as fast as you have normally been accustomed to. And, it's going to the grocery store and having to wait in line, and it's, all of these things which, are just, they're different. They're change for
They're
us,
change, and almost anything has a plus or negative balance to it. If you took what we're going through right now and sent us back 30 years where we didn't have the internet, which also meant we did not have things delivered to us on the snap of a finger, we
Right.
would be experiencing it different. So we can still look for the gratitude in what we're dealing with. Yes, it's more challenging, but we can be grateful that we do get groceries. We can be grateful that things are still moving, even though it's certainly a slowed pace, and to stay focused on what we have control over. Because as I mentioned, we're all in the same storm, but we're impacted differently. So there are people who are at that stress level that our conversation today is really not going to be that helpful if they have a family member who possibly is dying from it. So if you stay centered on where you are today, are you currently healthy today? Are you currently have groceries in your fridge today? Do you have access to get groceries if you need to? But we tend to go into the future and worry about next week or even maybe tomorrow or next month what it's going to be. And we don't know what next month's going to be on a normal day, let alone when we're dealing with a virus. So the more we could stay focused for today, and today I am healthy, today I am breathing on my own, today I have groceries, maybe not the food that I want to eat, but I was talking to a friend the other day. Anytime I say my cupboards are bare, it just means I don't have my favorite foods, but I still have the go-to foods, but it's like my favorite foods are gone. I need to go to the grocery store, but I still have stuff I can eat if I want to.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you can look at this is an opportunity to exercise
Yeah.
that muscle of staying in the moment, because even when there is no pandemic, that is just such a powerful
It
tool
is.
at enjoying our life better, is to not be in the past or in the future, but staying obviously in that present moment. So this is really for all of us boot camp,
Yeah.
to stay in the present moment, because it is changing day by day. It's changing week by week, and in so many ways. And so, today is all you really need to deal with, and this moment is all you do, and just getting better, being comfortable with that, because our brain so much wants to plan the future for
Right.
survival purposes, but it doesn't need to. We're okay in this moment, because tomorrow it probably is going to change anyway, and all those plans that you had, are going to be a whole different story anyway, and to remember that. So yeah, I mean, to look at this as sort of boot camp to sort of stay in the moment, I think is a really good way to look at this.
It's an absolute boot camp, but it's also a good reminder. Like I've been
Hmm.
doing this work for well over a decade, and I've made it a daily practice to focus on gratitude, to focus on what I have control over rather than what I don't have control over. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I don't want to control situations that I don't have control over, but I know at the end of the day, that's adding stress. Like I cannot change that person. I cannot make the virus go away, but I can focus on my part of it and what I can do. And the more you practice that daily being present in the good times when days are easy and it's easy to find things to be grateful for, that's when the practice comes in handy when you are in those moments of uncertainty. And I think sometimes uncertainty is harder than hard fact. Like if we
Yeah.
knew a hard
Yes.
fact that this pandemic was going to be over, and by the way, I have zero idea. So I'm just throwing this date out. July 1st. then we would be able to make plans and move forward for July 1st. We would know it's going to be hard for a few months, but we know July 1st things are going to change. We don't know that. So the uncertainty of it adds an additional stress level to it.
Yes. Yes. And, segueing that into, I know what on a lot of people's mind is the economic impact, because,
Yeah.
I think all of us are beginning to see signs of, the virus itself. We've done a great job in, I think, a lot of the communities, and we're beginning to see the fruit of all of our efforts of having to, stay home. And I hate that term, social distance, but
Me too. It's physical distance, folks. Physical distance. We can
right.
still be social.
Yes, exactly. And so, but I think a lot of us are obviously, dealing with this, economic impact. How is, what am I going to do if I'm not working? If I was in the process of looking for a job right at the beginning of the year, and now I'm kind of stuck
Yeah,
in this system right now, and what do I do if my business has been closed down? So many people are in my boat
absolutely.
as a small business, trying to, wonder, okay, what are we going to do about this? And, maybe somewhat skeptical that, the government's really going to be able to bail us out, you know. So, and then, so, I think, like you said, I think to take a look at this and change the perspective that, maybe this is a good time. I mean, how little, me as a small business owner, how few times do I really have where I have a less demands and can maybe, look at, working on a few projects or a few things that, I've
Yeah,
really wanted to do for my business, but, just haven't been able, to do that. It's like you said, just trying to see what you have in the moment. And if it's for the people if you're not employed, I know that's really tough right now. I think it's, looking at not being afraid to ask for help, because,
yeah,
I think that there are a lot of resources out there. And I think as a community, everybody wants to help each other. So, really, not having the courage to say, hey, what can I do to get the help that I need from family members, from the community, from our
right.
churches, from, different places.
Yeah, and I think that's an important fact to find out where you are in that stress. Are you in
Yeah.
survival mode where you don't
Right.
have a job and wondering how you're going to pay for groceries? That's a completely different level than the stress of either I'm working too much or next month I might not have a job. I don't know. But right now I do have a job. So my stress
Right.
level is a different aspect. When you're in survival mode, it's hard to look outside of survival mode. But
Yeah.
just as you had mentioned, to ask for help. And there are lots of people who are opening up their doors and getting groceries and helping people. Because I think where I find the gratitude, there's several reasons I find gratitude in what we're going through, along with a lot of challenge and heartache. But because it is a global impact, we are in the same storm being affected differently. So
Yeah.
it's not like we can see an earthquake that happened in Chile and for 3 or 4 days we're sending relief and worried about them. And then we forget because we go on with life.
Right.
Everybody is being impacted at some level. And so the people who are less impacted are reaching out to help those who are in the survival mode. So if you're in survival mode, the more that you can find gratitude and ask for help, the easier it's going to be to maneuver through that. But when you're, paycheck to paycheck and your paycheck isn't coming in, that's a completely different level of work that you need to do to stay in a place of peace.
Yes. Yes, and I think that to me is definitely, and I in my career, and I know you in your career, have had a time, believe it or not, where you've
Yeah.
been unemployed, and been in that situation, and I do think surrounding, yourself with those resources, being not afraid to ask for help.
Right.
I think all of us want to be independent and in a sense
Yeah.
don't want to, ask for help, but let that go. I think everybody understands, and really gather those forces around you, because I think
Yeah.
that that's what's going to help you, get through this situation is those things. And then, for those of us that are, maybe furloughed, or our businesses are not, producing as much, like you said, I mean, take, is there a way to look at this as a time of, yes, maybe less physical productivity, but,
Right.
and, maybe more productivity in a different way.
And seeing what you can do today to make your next month a little easier for your business. I mean,
Right.
it is a good opportunity to see, like, Zoom meetings right now are off the charts because everybody
Right.
is needing to go online to be of service that way. So
Yeah.
I'm in many, many meetings in that facet that maybe we'll be able to do less in-person traveling things and still have that connection.
Right.
I certainly hope we never go completely away from travel and gathering as communities, because it's so important in that aspect. But this
Yeah.
is the opportunity
Great.
to see, what can I do to
Mhm.
lessen the impact of what's going on in my life, and look for new ways. Maybe it's taking a class. Maybe it's watching silly TV shows for an afternoon to relax. Like, there isn't a right or wrong way to de-stress yourself right now. Well, there's a few wrong ways, like sitting down and like over drinking and stuff like that's probably not the best way to handle it. But to really be gentle with yourself during this experience, because we've not experienced it before. Other generations who have lived through war times, or not even other generations, other countries that have dealt with war, they have experienced this. I was talking to a colleague of mine who grew up in Lebanon during the war. So he was like, the enemy was loud, and bombs and shooting and guns and stuff, and like they would hide under things to stay safe. Whereas the pandemic, it's a different kind of fear that people are dealing with, but it's still uncertain and feeling of fear that way. So the more you can mitigate that, the better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have talked to, the patients that we're talking to. We talked about, how, yes, I mean, we have been lucky, for most of the people who are experiencing this and the younger generations, but, older generations have been through this, have wisdom
Mm-hmm.
of having, been through this and weathered the storm. And just as they have done it, we will, do that as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes, taking a moment maybe to appreciate, this has given us a better sense of appreciation for people that, have weathered the Great Depression or the world wars. It's given us a better appreciation for that.
Absolutely. And just again, going back to things like, when things are really hard, there are still things we can be grateful for in the moment.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's going back to, I had a comfortable bed to sleep in.
Yeah.
I've told you before, when we've shared time together, my mom, the last several years of her life, was on oxygen. Like, I don't wake up and say, okay, body, start breathing now. I
Right.
don't have to think about it. So the vast majority of us take our breathing for granted. Because of
Right.
my mom's experience, I don't. Like, I'm
Right.
grateful that I can breathe on my own. So
Right.
if you're in a really challenging situation, that is something you can be grateful for, because not everybody does breathe on their own. Thankfully, medicine and technology allows people to have functionality of breathing through equipment helping them stay alive. So
Yeah.
there's many things that we can do to find the gratitude in this moment.
Yeah. And then, I think for all of us, social contact, is a little bit of a struggle. I mean,
Yeah.
I know, all of us probably have loved ones that we just haven't been around, because we just don't want to take that risk.
Right.
For some of us who love to travel, we haven't been able to travel. We're probably tempted to, but we haven't done that. And I think that takes, we are, as human beings, social animals. Now, granted, some of us more than others. I mean, there's plenty of us who are just happy to be at home, enjoy the quiet. But I think to some extent, even those of us, and I tend to be one of them, that doesn't mind being at home alone and quiet, you still have some degree of socialness that helps us to feel connected or part of a greater whole. And I think most of us, and most of the news has kind of helped us to figure out ways to reach out for that. But I would also encourage to make that part of your practice, to find unique and ways to feed a little bit that social part of us, that's us, because without it, I do think there is something that we are missing.
Oh, absolutely. We are definitely social creatures. Introverts have an easier time with this than us extroverts. But I also think the importance of, when we're talking about socializing and doing the Zoom calls or FaceTime or getting, connected online, I think it's important to realize, what is our conversation about? Because we're so consumed by the virus. What do? We get on Zoom and we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What's going to happen next? And so we still give conversation and our time to the virus. So maybe, and it's important to not stuff your feelings about it. If you're afraid, you need to figure out ways to get them out, and we can talk about that. But to have a conversation, maybe friends who watch the same TV show or want to watch a movie together, and watch it and then talk about it. Talk about something funny or plans that you want to do in the future. We will get to travel again. We are so used to being able to click a button. Let me tell you, patience is not part of my DNA. So it is a practice to remember, but we're so used to hitting a button on our computer and a ticket show up in our email and we're off to the airport. So we have to understand that we've been so busy. And I do believe a lot of people have wanted their lives to slow down, but either work doesn't allow it, or we've just gotten in this habit that if we have an off day, I tend to, if I have an off day, I'm like, oh my God, I'm bored. What should I do? So it's easy to get into that staying busy because we don't want to take that time. So I absolutely encourage socializing still, but ask yourself, what is the conversation? Am I joining a blame, shame, and complain conversation, or am I joining a conversation on love, kindness, and compassion?
Yes, I agree. And I have to feel like I have, even me as a provider, it's something that when we're talking about patients and we're just chatting as, I'm doing some type of a service or a telehealth call, not to just go to the negativity about, how the day is hard and how, maybe you went to the grocery store and somebody wasn't wearing the mask like they should, or, the house next door had 20 people in it. Like you said, to try to somehow change that conversation into, a little bit more positive direction. Because like you said, it's just easy to kind of drift into those conversations when you're social, about, the difficulty, and then I think that in a sense help us. It's not that we don't want to share our difficulties. We just don't want to dwell on them, and the negative side of them.
Yeah, it's absolutely easy to do, especially when we're in a space of the focus being on the fear of it. But it's not, let fear visit you, because it has something, it's telling you, I'm not focusing on what I want in my life. I'm focusing on what I don't want. But it's really easy. Like, I personally believe whatever I focus on, I'm giving that energy to grow. So if I'm focusing on my fear and I'm focusing on my frustration that person in the grocery store didn't wear their mask, which I do click lists, so I don't go inside, but I absolutely see people, and my initial thought is, what are they doing? but
Yeah.
I don't have control over them. I have
Yeah.
control over my reaction, and I'm giving them my power by allowing them to frustrate me. It
Yeah.
takes practice, and possibly in a pandemic's not the best time to start practicing it, but it really is about focusing on what do I have control over. I have control over me. I have control over putting a mask on me. I have a control over me staying at home, and I don't have control over what other people do, but I personally want to stay in peace. So if I'm focusing on people in the outer world, I'm taking myself out of peace.
Yeah. Well, to sort of kind of maybe wrap up a little bit about everything. So I kind of came up with a little bit of a list of the things that I would recommend, that people sort of have in the back of their mind or be thinking about.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you for your list of what you
Okay.
think it is. Like my list says, keep a list or keep in your mind or on paper of what's going right. Whether you do that practice every day, whether you do it in your head as you're, driving or waking up in the morning. But again, that's focusing on gratitude and keeping a list in your mind of what is going right. I agree to back to what you say, focus on what you can do, whether it's in, you at home, if you're at home and stuck at home, what are the things that you can do? Or if you are going to work, realizing that you can only do so much and that you have to ask for help to do some of the other things because you're so busy right now. Just focus only on what you can do. To ask for help if you need it. I think everybody right now is very sensitive to, asking for help. And the same token, if you're, looking to see how you can help others, so don't always have the focus sort of on you and what's going on in your life, but, maybe distract yourself a little bit by, thinking about how you, if you're in a space where you feel good, how can you help others? If you have time, utilize this time to try something new. Like you said, Carol, I mean, maybe for some of us, it's just an unwind time to just sit, relax, read a book. And maybe for some of us, it might be, hey, let me try something
Yeah.
new. If you've always wanted to do a little yoga or Tai Chi, there are just so many online offerings right now that it's just a great opportunity to take advantage of those things. I think I've done like 6 webinars this week on different topics just because it's been so easily and readily available.
Yeah.
And I would say, if you're at home, do what you need to do, like you said, and be kind, but don't be afraid, a couple days a week to just get up, get dressed, and, sort of get yourself, going a little bit, even if you're not going anywhere. I
Yeah.
think just telling your body, hey, we're going to change the routine back into a little bit of what you normally do, is good too. So those are sort of the things that, from a stress standpoint, that I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree with all of them. And a few that I would add is, again, it's all about being aware of how you feel, because many of us are operating on autopilot and we're not paying attention to how it feels. So when you think about, does this feel good or does this feel scary? Does this feel happy or does it feel stressful? And then make a change that way. And taking some deep breaths, some conscious deep breaths, because when we are in stress or when we are in fear, we're tending to constrict our breathing, and we're not even giving ourselves the oxygen we need. So deep conscious breathing. Obviously, we're breathing all the time on our own without thinking about it. But the more you're aware, this doesn't feel good, just take some deep breaths. I think it's important to be gentle with yourself. We're going through a time that the vast majority of us have never experienced before. So you don't even know how you should maneuver through this. And to really be okay, like, I teach kindness and I coach on kindness and I speak on kindness, and people will say, I'm always kind. And I'm like, I coach on this and I'm not always kind. I am kind the vast majority of time. And usually my unkindness is towards myself, but I'm not always kind. So it's about being gentle with yourself when you are showing up in the fear space rather than showing up as who you want to be. But I do think it's a good thing to ask yourself, who do I want to be right now? Do I want to be the person who is looking for solutions, who's offering solutions and being a helper? Or do I want to be the person who's coming from fear and complaining about what's going on in my life? Things are happening. We don't have control of the things happening, but we do have the ability to control our reaction to what's happening.
I agree.
Oh, one last one. Music.
Okay.
Find a good, happy playlist and listen to happy music. Get up and dance in your own place and move your body a little bit, but happy music is going to help.
I agree. My son's found a YouTube called Indoor Recess. So check it out. I mean, it's hilarious. Yeah, if you're 6 especially, you'll probably really love it. But, well, thank you very much for joining us here today, Carol. Again, please check out Carol Miller, and her website. I think your website is Carol CC Miller, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And thank you for joining us, giving us some tips on how to kind of manage our stress. I think no matter where you are on the spectrum, hopefully there was something valuable for you. My name again is Dr. Truty, owner of Balanced Physician Care. For any of my patients watching this, we will be having a COVID-19 update that we'll be recording and sending out to you either later today or Monday on what new things that we have, including we have in-office testing now. We do have the rapid testing, and I've heard quite a bit of information on a lot of supplements that can be beneficial for you to kind of help boost your immune system from some really good, reliable sources. So we're going to be doing some upcoming Facebook Live topics again, trying to hit different aspects of this virus and helping get the information for you. And of course, as always, keeping you and our members and community updated on what we know the status of our area and this virus. Thanks again, Carol, for joining us today. It's always great to see your smiling face. My name again is Dr. Sharyl Truty, owner of Balanced Physician Care here in Jacksonville, Florida. Have a good afternoon and be safe.